It's interesting to be at a conference like this or an event like this and then reflect on what actually goes on in schools in the UK. And it's quite a while actually since I worked in bilingual support services that existed in the UK when I first came back from working overseas and joined Manchester University, and I worked on the postgraduate certificate in education, which was the training course for teachers who go into schools. And there was at that time, this was in the 1980s, there was a specific program that trained ESOL teachers, as they were called in those days, to actually go and work in schools. And these were funded under what was called Section 11 funding. Some people may have heard of that. Actually very difficult to find on the internet now references to it. It's intriguing how this thing has disappeared, this kind of service has disappeared. And if you look at the history, I mean, that was back in 1966. So that was an act of Parliament that recognised that there was a need to support children in schools and adults, and funding was put into local authorities to allow people to be trained and to allow support specialists to go in. And that also funded these postgraduate certificate courses. Now, over the years, that has translated into a situation where there is no funding that goes directly into schools anymore for that process, but it's part of the general funding that goes into schools. Schools have changed quite dramatically over my career at the university, and now a lot of funding goes directly into schools. It doesn't even go through local authorities. So actually individual head teachers and governors and people within the environment of the school actually make decisions about what language support is going to be. But that's against a background of there being, and this was a report that was I was looking at earlier today, it was written around about 2014, and when that report was written, there were 1 million children in schools in the UK who have an additional language. So that's 1 million children in schools. That's quite a significant number, as I'm sure you can work out. And they speak somewhere in the region of 360 plus languages. So I did a project recently where I worked in a number of London schools, and it was very interesting. And you could go into a school, and the range of languages that were being spoken amongst that community. You could have 30 children in that class and 30 different home languages. Literally, there would be a map on the wall, and there would be 30 different languages, 30 different origins for those children. And those children could come from Europe, they could come from South America, they could come from all over. So it's a very intriguing, very complex situation. And essentially, it's the role of the teacher to manage that process. So the way that it's sort of developed from having the sort of specialist services that were provided back in the 1980s, where you actually had additional language support that was provided by specialist trained teachers to do that work, although many of those teachers weren't bilingual. You've gone to a system now where actually you would have probably a language assistant within the school, somebody who speaks one of those 30 languages and is expected to kind of cope. And of course, it's a very complex situation. You can go to a school in North Manchester and every child in that school speaks the same home language. They all speak Punjabi, for example. And many of the teachers are also Punjabi speakers. So the notion that, that it's this kind of monolingual space. The monolingual space might be Punjabi in a Manchester school, not English. So it's a very complex environment. So,